Welcome to Life Inspired Coach. My name is Bethany Lewis, and I'm excited to spend this time with you. I'm a family relationships life coach that loves to be inspired, and I'm using this platform as a way to share some of the inspiration that has come my way. I hope it's as inspiring for you as it has been for me. I also want to let you know that coaching with me is an option. Check out my website, www.lifeinspiredcoach.com, for more information about working with me, and listen at the end for more details. I attended Alexis I Dupont High School, or AI as we called it, and played the flute in the band. Whenever I tell people that I was in band, I always want to clarify the point that in my high school, band was actually the cool thing to do. I don't know why I feel the need to add this clarification, since my participation in the popular class did not equate to my own personal popularity, but that's beside the point. AI was kind of upside down and backwards in relation to what Hollywood depicts as normal high school social dynamics. Band was the cool class, with almost 300 students participating, and the kids one would typically expect to be engaging in football games as the players or cheerleaders were actually in the band itself as instrumentalists or band friends. I think it is fair to say that much of the credit for the popularity of the band can be attributed to the band director, Mr. Perez. He loved music and was passionate about instilling that excitement for music in his students. He was also passionate about students doing their best and putting on a good show for the audiences. He provided us with opportunities that were very unique and impactful for everyone who participated. We marched in the Rose Bowl Parade in California, the Philadelphia Thanksgiving Day Parade, and St. Patrick's Day Parade in Dublin, Ireland, and those were just some of the trips that I took. As I've looked back on my experience in band, I am in awe of what he accomplished, keeping close to 300 teenagers under control in a classroom or on a football field, taking all of them and their chaperones across the country and world for parades and competitions, dedicating so much time on weekends and some holidays and even during the summer to his job. He really accomplished so much, and I felt moved to ask him to let me interview him. He was kind enough to agree, and I'm excited for you to hear the insights he shared in our conversation together. I am so excited for this interview today. I get to interview my band director from high school. His name is Paul Parets, and I think that by the time I was in high school, I realized that teachers were actually real people who had real lives outside of the classroom, but I don't know that I gave a lot of thought to that. And so I really don't know very much about my teachers. And so I'm really, really excited for this chance to get to know you as a person, Mr. Perez. So tell us about you. Where are you from and what was life like for you growing up?
Well, I'm from a town outside of Detroit called Melvindale, Michigan. And I think my growing up was pretty normal. I was born during World War II. And my formative years, like grades 1 through 5, involved and followed the Korean War, which came right after World War II. So I'm very much a war baby.
Wow. Do you have any siblings?
No, I was an only child.
Interesting. So when did you discover your love for music?
Well, even as a small child, I liked classical music. My mother in particular played as much as we could on our old Victrola record player with 78s that dropped down and the needle came over and played. And once I got into junior high, I decided to take beginning band. I liked the clarinet, and so I began to get involved in band. And when I hit high school, I really was planning to be a doctor.
Really?
Yes, I wanted to pursue medicine, but by the time I reached the end of my sophomore year, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I was not at that point inclined to think being a band director, but I knew I wanted to be a teacher. But I had an absolutely wonderful high school band director by the name of Alan Rogers, the late Alan Rogers, and he just fired up my love for band and music, and so I decided, well, I'm going to pursue a career in music education, which is what I did.
That's fantastic. I love it. So what was it about music that inspired you as a kid and that continues to inspire you today? Because the whole thing with this podcast that I love is talking about inspiration, things that inspire us. And so what is it about music that inspires you?
Well, music is a very generic term. I mean, it covers everything from country to jazz to rap to Broadway tunes to classical music. So that's a difficult question to answer. Classical music in particular is an intellectual exploration of your emotions. A lot of so-called country, western, jazz, pop, rap is really not intellectual. It goes for the emotions purely. Well, okay, that's fine. But I liked the fact that there was substance to classical music. And I realized I was sort of in the minority among high school kids on that subject. But my mother took me to a performance by the Delaware Symphony at Ford Auditorium. Last number on their program was The Pines of Rome by Ottorino Respighi, which ended with the Pines of the Appian Way.
Oh, we
I knew
played that,
from
didn't
that
we?
minute forward, classical music was going to be a part of my life, and I hoped a part of the lives of the kids that I taught.
That's beautiful. I think I remember that. Did you have us play that?
I think so, yes. What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 2000.
Yes, I think you might have been the first band to play The Pines of the Appian Way.
That's
And
awesome. Oh, I feel
it
so special.
starts so quietly, and then it just blows the roof off the place.
Yes, pretty sure that's the phrase that you used when you taught it to us. That's awesome. It's like bringing me back. So it sounds like you knew that you wanted to be a teacher, and then when did you know that you wanted to teach music specifically? How did that come about?
Oh, by the time I was a junior, I was pretty convinced that that's what I wanted to do. That was the result of having Alan Rogers as my band director. He was an absolutely wonderful man.
So what was it about him that was so inspiring for you, or that made such an impact?
Well, he loved kids and he loved music in that order, and
Mm.
that's exactly the way I approached my career. I loved kids and I loved music. Kids was always my higher priority over the music because I recognized that as I got into teaching, I wasn't going to turn out huge numbers of professional musicians, but every kid in my band was going to grow up to be a person, a husband, a wife, mother, father, aunt, uncle, citizen of the community, co-worker, a member of their church or whatever religion they belonged to, and they needed to be the best people they could be.
Mm.
So that was my first priority.
That's beautiful. I love teachers for that reason. I love teachers who have that as their main priority and their thought when they go into it. It's a beautiful thing, and we need teachers like that. So where did you end up doing your studies?
Well, I attended Central Michigan University and the University of Michigan for my degrees and had absolutely spectacular instruction at both schools.
What was it that brought you to AI specifically? How did you end up in Delaware?
Well, first I taught at a high school in Michigan for 10 years, Croswell-Lexington High School in the thumb of Michigan, known locally as Croslex High School. And in many ways, it couldn't have been a more different community than AI Dupont. It was a rural high school, 100% white, as was the whole county was 100% white. It was like a sort of bubble. And during the 10 years I was there, the Croslex band developed a good reputation for being an outstanding band. And when I say that, I'm referring to two different phases of the band. One, concert band. Secondly, the marching band, both of which I sort of hope I did a good job in building.
Did they already had the program? You came in and continued it?
Well, yes, they did have a program which had been a very good one, but they had hired a man who, in a very short time, lost a lot of kids. They just dropped out of band, period. And the band was in crisis. And George Cavender from the University of Michigan, who was my lifelong mentor until he passed, called me and said that Roswell-Lexington School District had asked for his help and would I be interested in the job. I had just graduated from college, literally just graduated. I said, sure. So I went up and interviewed, and they hired me on the spot.
Awesome. So then, yeah, how did that transfer to going to AI?
Well, I had been at Croslex for 10 years, and while there, I married a local girl, Karen, who became my wife, and she had a yen get out of the area. She was born there, lived there. We were raising a family there, and she wanted to see a different part of the world. That was always in the background. But the school district constantly battled for funding. It was frustrating. Our own children were going to be going to school in a short order, and we were very concerned about the future of the school district. So again, George Cavender intervened, called me and said that job opening in Delaware, which we thought was part of New Jersey, And he would like to recommend me. Well, he did recommend me, and I went and interviewed, and they didn't hire me.
Oh,
So
really?
I spent one more year at Croslex, and then the next summer, the principal of AI Dupont High School showed up at my front door in Croswell, Michigan, middle of the summer. A guy by the name of Dr. William Bird, and I was, my wife and I were speechless. I said, "Well, Dr. Bird, what if I hadn't been here?" And he said, "It wouldn't have mattered. I found out everything I wanted to know." He had gone in a lot of stores in Lexington and in Croswell and said that he was moving his family there, and kids were in band, and what did locals think about the band? And he said, "I learned everything I needed to know about you."
Oh
So
my
he
goodness.
AI, and I did.
That's amazing. So Mr. Cavender must have been very well connected if he knew of high schools all over the East were needing help, or and Midwest too. That's really interesting.
Well, I'm not sure he was connected. He was director of the Michigan band, and so school districts routinely called him looking for candidates to
Oh, I see.
take, to take jobs.
So you ended up at AI. That's fantastic. So what was the band program like when you got there, and how did you grow it to what it became?
Well, very much like the situation at Croslex, there had been a very fine program to the direction of Bob Streckfuss, who the year before had accepted the job at U of D as director of bands and left.
Mm.
And that was the year that they didn't hire me. They hired another man. In 1 year, he apparently did a lot of damage to the program. So
Oh,
once again, I was looking at a program that was in crisis.
oh,
And
interesting.
George Cavender had told me many years before, he said, "Don't ever take a job at a high school where the band is outstanding." I sort of looked at him and he said, "You'll never be credited with anything that goes well. And
Mm.
if anything goes wrong, you will be totally blamed." He said, "Always look for a job where there's a good possibility, but the band is in trouble." And that was ended up being true at Croslex and at AI Dupont. So that summer, Dr. Bird came to my house. My wife and I flew out to Delaware, spent a few days, looked around, and met with Dr. Bird at the high school, and he told me to go down and check out the band room and see if I had any questions. I asked my wife to stay with him. I got down to the band room, opened the doors, and walked in, and the entire band was sitting there. It was the middle of the summer, about 85 kids. And I realized he had set me up. They were all looking at me, so I said hello, and we started talking, and I told them I realized they had had a tough year. I came on as director. I would try to restore the band that they loved. And I noticed that one of the boys sitting in the trombone section had a big cast on his leg. So I said, "What happened to you, dude?" He said he had broken his leg during a summer soccer game. And I said, "Well, you need to get that fixed in a hurry because AI will need you in September." That did it. All the kids started talking with me and asking questions and so on. And finally, it was time for me to head back to the office. And we went out to dinner, and Dr. Bird, in the meantime, had polled all of the kids on whether they liked me or not. And he said the unanimous verdict is they want you. So here's a contract. Please sign it. And I did.
He did his research. I'm impressed.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome.
he was a brilliant man. He had come to AI from Dade County, Florida. Had been hired specifically by the AI school district because Murray Schwartz had handed down the deseg order, and Dr. Bird was considered an expert in walking a high school through the first stages of desegregation.
Oh, interesting. He definitely did a good thing in bringing you to AI. Um,
Well, I told some of my friends back in Michigan, I said, teaching band at AI is like teaching at the United Nations. There are every race, every religion under the sun is in the band. And I said, they're all great kids. So
I love it.
that was the
That's so
beginning
true.
of
It
a
was
good
such
thing.
a good and diverse place to grow up. I am so grateful that I got to go there. So when you went into, it sounds like you did, but going into teaching, did you have the idea of creating what you did? Like, was that your goal to create such a huge and amazing program?
I always wanted to have an outstanding band. I mean, what nobody, as I often told the kids, nobody wants to be second best. You don't get in a huddle and slap each other in the back and yell mediocre. Uh, so yeah, I wanted an outstanding band. I had no guarantee that I was ever going to have one. But the first thing I did was to tell the kids that the band belonged to them. It didn't belong to me. When they performed public as a marching band, I wasn't on the field. I was somewhere out of sight watching them. And I said, so it's your band, and you need to have officers to run it. So they elected a president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and immediately I engaged those kids in making decisions. So the band executive board became a very important aspect of the program at AI. And we always had our elections for the following year, for the coming year, in late May. And I mean, it was sometimes took 2 days because the desire to be band president and vice president and other officers was very high.
I remember.
There were a lot of candidates the kids had to vote on, and then they had to also elect an assistant drum major who 2 years later would be the drum major. I told them, I said, look, it's not my job to pick your leadership. It's your job to pick your leadership, and once you do, you better follow that leader. They did.
Yeah, yeah. I remember all of that. I guess I just accepted it as, normal. It's probably a unique way of approaching things, and it was really effective. And probably core to the success. That's really cool. So when did you come to AI, and how long did you end up teaching there?
I came there in the fall of 1976, and I retired in 2012, 36 years later.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. So have you calculated it? Do you know how many students you had over the years?
Well, let's not forget, I also had 10 years before that in Michigan, so I taught for a total of 46 years.
Oh my goodness.
I've never calculated how many students I had, but I have a Facebook page with about 3,400 friends, and of that 3,400, 2,400 are former students from Michigan and AI.
That's amazing. I love it. And I love that you continue to keep in touch with people. And always admired that you do such a good job of that. I love that. And that's incredible. There are a lot of lives touched.
No, those kids shaped my life. And I told the band when I first got there, I said, I'm handing my reputation over to you. Because if you fail, then I fail, and I'll be fired. So I said, you hold my life in your hands. And they sort of looked at me, and I said, that's just the way life works. If things go well, it's your credit. You made it happen because you're the ones that do the work. And if things go badly, that's my fault. That's on me, and I need to go. And I followed that sort of personal motto my entire teaching career.
That's amazing. So which graduating class was your favorite? I'm just kidding. We all know it was the class of 2000. And that was, obviously.
You know what? Every class was my favorite class because
You're so
each
diplomatic.
class left no, it's not diplomatic. Each of those classes, every one of them left an indelible but different mark on my life. And I can't think of a single class that graduated that didn't help me grow as a person in some way.
That's beautiful. I love that. And you also taught social studies, is that right?
Well, not social studies. I taught advanced placement, United States government and politics. And for your listeners who aren't sure what advanced placement means, an advanced placement course at a high school is for college credit. So it's a very, very tough and demanding course.
Yeah.
Study. And there are AP classes in biology, science, social studies, a whole range of subjects. So I had to get certified, teach advanced placement government, which I did, and I taught it for the last, I think, 11 or 12 years of my career.
Oh, that's awesome. Did you enjoy it?
Oh, very much. Like band, kids had to want to be in an AP level course. Band is an elective. a kid signs up for band on their own choice. And I always remembered that. They wanted to be here. And the same was true of AP government. They knew what was coming, but they wanted to be here.
That makes a difference, I imagine, in how the kids approach the classes. That's good.
Well, I realized I owed them something. If I taught math or English, the kids in my class were there for 1 year. They didn't have any choice. They had to take the class.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids I had in band said, I want to be there. And they weren't there for just 1 year. They were there for 4 years. So those kids became very special to me because I was watching them grow up year by year. And I was participating in their life as they grew up. I mean, we were a busy band. We had 10 football games a year, 2 major concerts a year, and almost always every year a trip somewhere, either to Pasadena, California, or London, or Dublin, Ireland, or the Vatican in Italy, Canada. We just traveled all over the world.
That's right. So you spend a lot of time with us. That is an interesting perspective that, again, I hadn't thought of as a teenager, but I see now, like, that would be really such a cool experience to get to watch these kids grow up and be a part of that. That's beautiful.
Yep.
So this might be a really broad question, but take it as you will. What do you love about teaching? What is it that drove you to it and was inspiring and invigorating for you about it?
Well, the inspiration of teaching is that you're helping kids in their most formative years, ages 14 to 18. You're helping them develop life skills and an attitude toward life itself. And I recognize they also have their own subculture. On Saturday night, a bunch of teenagers get together. They influence each other probably far more than any teacher influences them. But it was important to me to know that I was turning out kids who, in many ways, I hoped would be good citizens, who would believe in themselves and believe in others. I told the band constantly, you can't succeed unless you work together. We have one and only one ambition, to be the best. What else is there? That motto was over the band room door, and I pointed it out to them a couple of times a year. And I said, you're the ones who choose what this band is going to be, not me. There are 285 of you and one of me, and you can run over me anytime you want. I'll go down fighting, but you can run over me anytime you want.
That's awesome. Yeah, actually, as you're saying that, I totally remember you saying that, and I do remember that being over the band door. And another thing that you used to say to us came back to me recently, and I remember I actually messaged you through Facebook to make sure I had the quote right. So you would tell us, if you're going to make a mistake, make a big one. Better to be strong and wrong than safe and small. And back in high school, I did not understand the value of that advice. I was terrified of making mistakes and for sure was not going to play loudly if I wasn't confident in my skills. But recently I've been taking this certification to become a life coach and practicing in front of my classmates and my instructor. I realized that advice was so spot on and so perfect. Like, I was there to learn, and the best way to do that is through experience. And so I just needed to give it my all and learn from whatever mistakes came. And that was really the best way to approach it. So thank you for the wisdom that you shared back then that apparently stayed with me.
Well, bingo, that's the whole point of it all. I often thought of education or the role that a teacher plays in education as being like a vaccination. Sometimes the use of that vaccination doesn't show up for years, but eventually it does, and you're doing exactly the right thing. Most people go through life in fear of making a mistake and viewing their life as potential failure. Well, you only get to do this once, and then the Almighty is going to call you home, literally. And you weren't put here to be perfect. You were put here to do something. And so many people are afraid that if they do something, they'll make a mistake. Well, duh. I make mistakes 15 times a day, but that doesn't prevent me from plowing ahead, because every now and then I also do something right. And that's the important thing. And kids are so afraid that they will do something wrong, especially within their own subculture, which can be a good or a bad thing depending on who they're chumming with. But I wanted them to know, life is a risk. Take it. Do it big. If it's going to turn out bad, oh well, you'll have another chance to do it right big.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And I love that perspective of teaching as a vaccination. I'd never thought of that before, but it really, I think that's so true. And it really has, these things have stayed with me. And it was really funny because as when it finally did dawn on me, like 20 some odd years later, I was like, oh, that's what he was talking about. That was actually really, really good advice. And it was really helpful for me. I was like prepping for a kind of an exam thing that I was going to be taking, or like I was going to be coaching in front of these peers and my instructor. And I needed some good thoughts to help me go into it. And that came back to me. So that's when I reached out to you. I was like, can you remind me what were the exact words of that? But it really does, it can make a difference so long down the road and continue to bless lives. So I love that perspective, and I'm so grateful for the advice and the life lessons that you taught us and that I learned through, you and other teachers and experiences back then.
I think it's important to have the courage to fail, because
Yeah.
you're going to fail at some point. But if you have no courage, you won't fail because you won't ever do anything. So you did exactly the right thing. You're striving to be a life coach is a wonderful thing because you're just the exact right kind of person to be a life coach. I can remember that from you and your brothers and sisters in high school. You came from a wonderful family, and you will help many, many others. I'm sure you will.
Thank you, Mr. Parts. That means a lot. I really appreciate that. And I just feel very called to it. But it's so true. And I love what you said about having the courage to fail, because that is the key. Like if we're willing to feel the emotion that comes along with failure, then we're going to be able to do anything. Like that opens the door to amazing success. And so again, your advice of go big. And if you're going to fail big, or if you're going to fail big. And that allows you to open up the opportunity to succeed big as well. I think it's truth. It's so good. Are there other pieces of advice and wisdom that you had shared with your students that you hope that they keep in mind?
Well, as I know from Holy Scripture, and in your case also from the Book of Mormon, those testaments are filled with people who had the courage to try, even when there was very high risk they would fail.
Mm.
They didn't fail because they had the faith in what they were doing. And that's so important. I have to be honest with you, one of the things that really alarms me about today's culture is we are losing the value of faith. And I think that's absolutely scary. I saw a headline on a website the other day, and it almost seemed to me the headline was sort of gloating that by 2054, churchgoers would be in the minority in this country. I thought, why are you so happy about that? You have to have faith in something. Well, obviously, the only real basis for faith of any kind is in the Creator who created us all. Now you're not allowed to say that in public schools anymore, which is an indication of where we're heading, and that sort of scares me.
Yeah, I love that faith is such an important thing for you, and I think that comes out, and I think that's the foundation for people. It makes everything more doable. Like life is more doable when you have faith that there's purpose and there's someone who's got your back no matter what, and that it allows that a possibility of failure to not be overwhelming because there's hope for overcoming.
You're exactly right. Committing yourself to faith is also a risk.
Yeah.
Is it a risk worth taking? Absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely worth taking.
Yeah. Yes. I agree 100%. I actually was talking to my husband yesterday about faith, and not everybody believes the same thing, but having a faith in some higher power that allows us to, again, have that confidence to move forward and have something to fall back on makes all of the difference. And that really is the foundation of any forward movement. Like the reason that we do anything is because we hope that something good will come of it, right? Or that we'll feel something. That's why we want to move forward. And so,
exactly.
And that faith that that's going to turn out for us is what drives everything. So yeah, having faith as a core value, I think, is really key to happiness in this life. Now, if we're gonna kind of shift a little bit to memories of band trips for you, and I know you've taken, like you said, you've taken the band so many places, and it blows my mind to like look back and think about everything that you pulled off with that. Like, how the heck did you do that? But yeah, what were some of the most memorable band trips for you, or did you have a favorite place that you took the band?
Well, every place I took the band was a favorite because something unique took place in each and every venture. The AI band has performed at the Rose Bowl 5 times. There are
Wow.
only 2 high school bands in the country that can claim to have performed at the Rose Bowl for 5 times under the same director. But those trips were not duplicates. Every one of those trips was different because the kids were different. And the time had changed because you have to wait 4 years before you can be invited back. So traveling anywhere, going to Toronto for a competition in Canada, which we did 3 or 4 times, none of those were duplicates. Every trip becomes a unique event in my life and in the life of the kids who are there. So there is no favorite trip that I can point to. I can tell you perhaps the most exciting trip of all was our very first invitation to perform at the Rose Bowl, because in high school band, the Rose Bowl is there. That's it. That's the top. There's nowhere to go higher than that. You undergo such an unbelievable examination by the Tournament of Roses Commission before you get an invitation. You have to send them tapes and videos and photographs and letters of recommendation. They send a representative to come to your high school and see your band in action. I mean, you really get scrutinized.
I had no
So
idea. That's so interesting.
so our very first trip to the Rose Bowl was, for me personally, a sort of euphoric experience because I thought, these kids made this happen, and we're here. We're here at the Rose Bowl. You know, and you turn that corner at Colorado Boulevard, you're looking 4 miles straight ahead at people, a million people lining that road all the way down. Now,
Wow.
it's scary as heck, but it is so exhilarating. And there are literally tens of dozens of TV cameras all aimed right at you, and you know that the whole U.S. is watching you make that turn at Colorado Boulevard. I mean, there's nothing like it.
That's so awesome.
But every trip was an exciting trip. Were there occasional disappointments? Yes. You're traveling with 200 kids. Will every kid be a perfect traveler? No, because they're kids. And while they can maintain a persona at school for about 8 hours, on a trip, you're talking 24 hours a day for up to 7 or 8 days. Well, some kids can't make it. They inevitably make a dumb mistake. And those were the downsides of trips because I had to deal with that. But I never gave up on any kid, no matter what happened. So, yeah, I mean, traveling with a high school band is an absolutely astonishing experience. Is it a risk? Yes. Is it possible to fail? Yes. But if you don't do it, then what's the point?
Well, and those trips did provide some really, really wonderful memories and incredible opportunities and experiences. I just couldn't have gotten any other way. Yeah, when I think about it, it is amazing to me. How many people did you take on these trips? Because there were 285 kids in the band itself, and then there were
Well, not
chaperones.
always. 285 was the largest band we ever had.
Okay.
We averaged over the years about 250. And my goal was to make sure that every kid got to go. I went out and begged for money from banks and corporations. We held fundraisers, and I to this day I'm sort of proud we never left a kid behind because they couldn't afford to go.
That's
We were
amazing. That's amazing. I didn't know that. My hat
Well,
is
that's
off to you.
hard. I
That's
mean, it's
amazing.
hard
Yeah.
because I have plus I don't know how many people realize our band was unique in some ways because 85% of the band members were varsity athletes as well as band members. That's kind of unusual. In fact, a CBS commentator, when we were at the Orange Bowl, said, "Well, here comes the jock band." And he went on to explain to the audience what he meant. Well, that label sort of stuck, and we became known as the jock band.
That's
So
hilarious.
you had to work around kids' sports schedules. We took one trip to London well, more than one, but on one particular trip going to London, I had to arrange in advance for an Olympic-sized swimming pool in London so the swim team could practice while we were there, and they did.
Are you serious?
Yeah, the City of London graciously offered us the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Center right in London. And so these kids got up at 6 o'clock in the morning and went and had swim practice, and then they came back and had breakfast with the band, and then we were off for whatever was going to happen that day. You just tried to make things happen so that every kid could be accommodated. And it was amazing in so many ways. I had kids who were Jewish and had special religious requirements. We tried to make it possible for them to get to synagogue on Saturday while we were traveling. We tried to make it possible for Mormons to get to temple no matter where we were. I mean, it was important to me that the kids understood that the band cared about them as individuals. One of my most memorable moments as a teacher at AI was we had an outstanding football player who was a Mormon, and he was destined, well, he had already been named as the quarterback for his coming senior year, and he decided instead that he would be the drum major of the band and gave up the opportunity to be quarterback. Well, his parents were shocked. The football coach was shocked. I even met with him personally and said, "You understand what you're doing here? Because you're giving up a real opportunity in one area." And he said, "I know that." But he said, "This is an opportunity in another area, and I want to take it." So you had all kinds of individual things that happened with kids that become memorable in my life because band meant so much to them.
Yeah, I think that's such a good example of what the band meant to people. Like that was the choice that was made because the band was such a unique and awesome experience for people. So thank you for making that a thing for all of us. So
tell your listeners on your podcast for me that no matter what they do for a living, whether they are a stay-at-home mom and that's a full-time job,
it is.
Or whether they're a teacher, a lawyer, a dentist, a doctor, it doesn't matter what anybody is doing. They have an opportunity to affect the lives of other people in such important ways, and so often we miss that opportunity. We don't do it, either because we think it's none of our business, or we're afraid that we'll make a mistake, or worst of all, we just don't care. Well, none of those are good reasons in the eyes of the Redeemer, as you and I both know. So no matter what you're doing in life, you have an opportunity to be something special to another person, particularly a young adult, a teenager, because they are 1 foot in childhood and 1 foot in adulthood, and they're making critical decisions about who they're going to be. So tell your listeners, it matters. Go out there and do something. Sponsor a club. Help the kid next door who's having trouble with math. Do whatever you can do.
Thank you. Yes, it makes a difference. It really makes a difference. And kids, I mean, I remember people who comments that they made or things that they've done to reach out to help that have stayed with me. And I hope to be able to do that for others, because we're all here.
Well, I think you've been doing that all your life. Don't be too shy here. I know the kind of person you are, and you are a giver, not a taker.
Thanks, Mr. Perez. Well, one of my favorite ideas is one of my friends recently posted this, I think, and she said, "We're all here walking each other home." Like, we're here on earth with this experience, and we're with each other, and the purpose is to help each other to, like you said, reach home with our Redeemer again. And it's a beautiful thing that we get to have the privilege of being in each other's lives, I think.
We're walking each other home. I love that. Tell that reader that now is permanently imprinted for me. We're each walking each other home.
Perfect. Isn't it beautiful? I love it so much. I love that imagery, and it rings so true. It's a beautiful thing. And you're leading us perfectly. I love this segue right into the next question that I had. And I think you're already answering it in some ways, but as a coach, my focus is on relationships and how we impact each other and the beauty that comes with those relationships. And I'm curious if you have thoughts on how music affects relationships. In what ways has music impacted the relationships that you've had in your life?
Well, let me give you an illustration about the band. The band was probably always about 70% white, but the other 30% were a very large number of African Americans in the band and Hispanic kids in the band and even a few Muslims in the band. They all shared one goal. They didn't care about each other's race. They didn't care about each other's faith. They had one goal, and that was to be the best. And I hope all of them left band remembering that experience, that race didn't matter, gender didn't matter, religion, for what it's worth, didn't matter. What mattered was achieving a goal. They wanted to be the best band they could be. And by gosh, they did it year after year. So, when people say to me, well, you know, race is an issue. Race is an issue because we make it an issue.
Mm-hmm.
As Americans, black, white, Hispanic, Muslim, Native American, male, female, we all have one goal, and that is to make our country the greatest it can be. Not compared to other countries, but compared to what it was yesterday, or a year ago, or a century ago. That's our goal. Not to fight each other, to put our shoulders to the wheel, to walk each other home, as your listener once said.
Yeah.
And if I taught anything in band that mattered a lot to me.
That's really beautiful. And you're right. That was, for me, as I felt that way totally. Like there wasn't differences. Like we were all there together. We were working on the same thing. And I think that is something that music in particular is a beautiful example of. Like you work together, every individual contributes their piece, and then you have this even greater whole because of each person, no matter what color they are, no matter what they believe or what they think. They're together working on a common goal, and that
Exactly.
unites us all.
And I would sometimes say to the band, every strong chain has one link that's weak. Who in this room wants to be the weak link? And there would be utter silence while they thought about it. And I said, no one in this room wants to be the weak link. So let's not have one. And we rarely did.
Yeah, it is such a unique experience to get to come together in that way and to participate in something like that. I'm really grateful that I had that experience. And we kind of talked about this a little bit before, but I just want to say it again that you continue to inspire me. And I love how you contribute to the lives of your students through social media. And I love the things that you post and how you keep in touch with people and on birthdays and comments on posts. So what drives that continued connection, and what advice would you want to give to your former students as we continue living our lives in this crazy world?
Well, here's an interesting thing for you. I start every morning on Facebook by sending out happy birthday messages to those who have their birthday on their page. If they don't have their birthday on their page, I don't know they have a birthday.
That's fair.
But I average about 9 birthdays a day, 365 days a year.
That's
So you
amazing.
do the math. The lowest of the entire year is always on September 21st, which was yesterday. I only had 2. The highest occurs I'm trying to remember, I think it's in May, 19 on the same day. But I send them faithfully every day. Why? Because they're my kids. They will always be my kids. Always. I was at a reunion last Saturday for the AI band classes of 1971 to 1981, period of 10 years. And I'm sorry, 1974 to 1984. There were about 100 people there. And when it was my turn to speak, I told them, I said, some of you are grandparents. Most of you are parents. You're still my kids, and don't ever forget it.
Oh,
And
that's
they are my
sweet.
kids.
I love that.
I
Yeah.
mean, if somebody is in your life and leaves an imprint on your life, that doesn't fade. That's why we have memories. Without memory, there is no life.
It's true.
So, I get up every morning and think to myself, I'm the luckiest man there ever was, because over 46 years, I got to work with thousands of the best kids there ever were.
And that's what makes a happy life, is choosing to believe that about it. I love that. That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So what is the advice that you would want to give your former students, your kids?
Well, never forget what you learned in band. We
Perfect.
have one and only one ambition, to be the best. What else is there? If you're going to be a cab driver, be the best cab driver there ever was. If you're going to be a stay-at-home mom, be the best stay-at-home mom there ever was. If you're going to be an eye surgeon, be the best one there ever was. Never get up in the morning and say to yourself, well, I'm going to be mediocre today. Don't be stupid. Nobody does that. Take the risk to be the best you can be every single day.
I love it. It's perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I have my last question is I'm going to ask, and this is one that I'm going to be asking all of the people that I interview. I want to know what inspires you or helps you to live an inspired life.
Well, two things in particular: my faith in God and my mother and father. I was fortunate to have a mom and dad who demanded that I do the right thing, who expected me to do the right thing, and who helped me to do the right thing. The rest was in the hands of God.
That's beautiful. They demanded, expected, and helped. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't demand me to be successful while they went to cocktail parties on Friday night. They helped me every step of the way.
And I'm sure that God was with you every step of the way as well.
I hope so. I know there are times that I have failed my Creator. I hope He realizes that spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak, because that's true of every human who's ever lived.
Yeah.
But I never get up in the morning and say to myself, well, I'm going to do something wrong today.
Yes, I am very grateful that God understands that about all of us. And I do believe that He is very, very merciful.
Well, I'll tell you, Bethany, I admire the risk you take in doing this, because you could always bomb, but I don't think you will, because that's not the kind of person you are. It takes courage
Thank you.
to do all of this and to be striving to get certification as a life coach, and I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever you'll achieve it all.
Oh, I really appreciate that. That means so much to me, because it's sometimes I lean on the faith of others in me. Sometimes I've got it, I
That's
can
why
believe.
we're walking each other home.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I love it. Well, it's been so good to catch up and get to know you a little bit better and reminisce on those days in band at AI. It was a beautiful time, and I am so grateful for it, and so grateful for you making it possible. Like, you did all of that. And I know you say that we did it, and we definitely, I'm sure we contributed, but it wouldn't have been possible without you. So thank you for all that you did for us.
That's music to my ears, and I thank you.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful day. It was so good to talk to you. Thanks so much, Mr. Parets.
Bye-bye, and God bless you.
You too.
Thank you so much for being here. I hope the things that have been shared have been helpful and inspiring. If you like what you've heard, please hit subscribe and share this with your friends. And if you're listening on a podcast app, please rate and review so that others can find this content more easily as well. If you're listening on YouTube, go ahead and throw a comment down below about what inspired you from this conversation. And please remember that I do coaching and would love to help you or someone you love to work through whatever challenges you're facing. My specialty is in family relationships. I love helping to strengthen families one challenging relationship at a time. Honestly, you can completely change your relationship with someone without having to change them at all. It is the most wonderful and liberating experience to realize you are free from the weight of judgment and negative feelings you've been enduring. So please hit me up if you want to fix a difficult relationship in your life. Visit my website, www.lifeinspiredcoach.com, to read testimonials, find out more about coaching, and contact me if you'd like to be coached. Thanks again. See you next time, and keep seeking an inspired life.